What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. So I just made it back from the record store for Record Store Day Black Friday. So today I'm talking about my RSD Black Friday experience and the albums I picked up. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So initially I was a little unsure what time I was going to go out to the record store, but I actually made it out there at the exact same time this year that I did last year. So last year when I got there at 2:15 in the morning, I was third in line. But when I made it out there this year, I was a little surprised to see there's a couple more people ahead of me in line. I still ended up being fifth in line, which was okay with me because there wasn't anything super limited on my list. So I knew being in the top five, I was pretty much guaranteed to get everything I was looking for. The people that were first and second in line, I didn't hear what time they got to the record store, but I know the person directly in front of me, they got off there about an hour before me. So it was around 1 a.m. that they showed up at the record store. And then it was about an hour after I showed up that, slowly some people started trickling in. It really wasn't until I'd say it was after at 4 a.m. when finally some more people started showing up. But in typical Michigan fashion, it was still pretty cold when I got to the record store. I think it was like 26 or 27 degrees outside. There wasn't actually snow on the ground, but it was still kind of snowing a little bit. It was kind of windy. At that time, there wasn't anyone actually sitting in line in front of the record store. The people that were there ahead of me had just set up their chairs and were sitting in their vehicles just because it was so cold. So I followed suit. I just set my chair up and sat in my car. And like I said, it was 2 a.m. when I got there. I don't think it was until probably closer to 5 a.m. that there was actually somebody sitting in line in front of the store. Actually, it may have been around 4:30 that I saw somebody sitting out there, but it's kind of funny because I remember looking up around 5 a.m. and there was maybe like 20, 25 people in line. And then I remember looking up at I think it was like around 6 and there was like 50 people in line. So in a really short period of time, there was a lot of people that showed up. So the record store that I always go to for Record Store Day, they always have huge crowds, especially in April for Record Store Day. When they open up their doors at 8 a.m., they typically have, I would say, somewhere in the neighborhood of around 400 people. Of course, for Record Store Day Black Friday, the lines are a lot shorter. This year, when they opened up their doors at 8:30, I'd say that there was probably around 100 people in line, which I would say is pretty average for the last several years. And sure, there are other record stores that I could go to in the general area that, don't have as big of crowds. I could probably get to 30 minutes before the doors open and still be pretty close to the front of the line. But the record store I go to, I know they're going to pretty much have everything on the list. And that's not always the case when it comes to smaller record stores. So I always go to Dearborn Music in Dearborn, Michigan for Record Store Day. And they do Record Store Day a little bit differently than they used to pre-pandemic. Before the pandemic, it was pretty much like every other record store out there. They would just open up the doors. It was kind of free-for-all. You would just go in and try to hunt down whatever album you wanted. But ever since 2020, they've adopted this wish list system that I know Amoeba Records out in California has done for a long time. I'm sure a lot of other record stores across the country have done also for a long time now. So at 8:30 when the doors open up, they pass out these wish lists, and which has a red ticket up here at the top. You just pull your ticket off. It's all numbered in the order in which you're standing in line. And you just go through and mark off what you want. And all the albums are pulled in the order in which you're standing in line. Yes, it does take away from some of that hunt, where you'd go in the record store and you're trying to find what albums you want, and people are cutting in front of other people, and it always seemed a little chaotic. And yes, there was some excitement to that free-for-all system that is gone with the wish list. But I like this system because, I know if I'm up towards the front of the line, I'm pretty much guaranteed to get whatever I'm looking for. And I'm sure the record store likes this system also because it's a lot more organized and they do a really good job. Even in April for Record Store Day, when they're processing, 400 plus orders, they actually do a pretty good job getting through all those orders, generally in about an hour or so. Especially with a record store the size of Dearborn Music. It's a very large store, so there would be stuff kind of spread out across the store. So you always kind of had to pick your poison of which area you wanted to go to first because you couldn't really go everywhere all at once. So while this wish list system might take away some of that thrill of the hunt of trying to track down the albums in the store, it's a lot, I think it's a lot better of a system. Plus the record store was running a sale on non-RSD titles also. So I knew I wasn't there for just RSD titles, so I had to kind of wait till they pulled a bunch of the titles and opened up the store for regular business. So I knew I was going to have to wait an hour or so anyway before I could go in and browse for regular albums. So the record store was running a 10% off sale on non-RSD titles. So there were a couple albums I've been having my eye on for a while that I decided to grab copies of today. The first one, Never Enough by Turnstile. It's a new album that came out earlier this year. I picked this up and held it in my hands probably multiple times since the album came out earlier this year. And for one reason or another, I always end up putting it back. It's an album that I really wasn't all that thrilled with when it came out earlier this year, but it's definitely grown on me since then. Enough that I figured I'd grab a copy of it on vinyl. Also, a new album from Hayley Williams. This is an album I really haven't talked about a lot on the channel here since it came out. This is an album that's in the running to be in my top 10 of the year, which is kind of funny because I was never a huge Paramore fan, but her solo material is so very different than what she did with Paramore. An Ego Death at a Bachelorette Party is a little more of the poppiness that she had on her first solo album. It's one I've really been enjoying since it came out. Was it a month or two back? And another one that just came out, I think it was just this week or the week before, is I Don't Want to Grow Up by the Descendants. This is the 40th anniversary pressing of this. This is something that's not been available on vinyl in a long time. There's a couple different versions of this. There was the standard version, which is what this is, and then there's the Punk Note version, which has alternate artwork, but I wanted the original artwork for the album, so that's why I grabbed this one. This is the album that I think really became the blueprint for a lot of those pop punk bands in the 90s. And for like $25, it's an album I just couldn't pass up. So that brings me to the RSD Black Friday releases that I picked up. The first one, this is one that I have complained about a couple of different times on the channel over the last month or so, and that is Punk Goes Acoustic. And really the only reason I complained about this is, just because it's half the album. When this came out in the early 2000s, there was 20 songs on it. There's only 10 on this compilation, but there's still some really good tracks on this one. That's why I really couldn't pass this one up. Hopefully eventually they'll do like a Punk Goes Acoustic Volume 2 and have the other half of the album released on vinyl, because it's never been available on vinyl before. So it says limited edition acoustic versions of punk favorites by Thrice, Yellow Card, Sugar Cult, Finch, Thursday, The Starting Line, The Ataris, Taking Back Sunday, Rise Against, and Ruffio. A nice little hype sticker, if I can get the glare from my light off the shrink wrap on there. Nice little hype sticker on there. It looks like it's on pressed on translucent yellow vinyl. And I will say, generally I'm not somebody who really cares about hype stickers. For the RSD hype stickers, maybe I'll try to pull that one off and stick it on the outer sleeve once I put this in a new sleeve. All right, so now I got the shrink wrap off. You can see the front cover of it. The back cover, just the track listing on there. And then, hey, look at that. For a $25 album, at least it comes in a nice, polyline sleeve there. Not like a lot of, $300 box sets that come in, junk paper sleeves. That's nice. That's nice translucent color there. I didn't realize there was an insert in there also. But just got the track listing on one side with just the 10 tracks. And then just has the acoustic guitar, and then just thanks from the label on the other side. One RSD Black Friday release that was an absolute must-have for me was the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. So this is the album as it was originally intended. So when this album was first released, there were 4 tracks on this album that were taken off right before it was released. This is the album where Bob was really finally given the freedom to do what he wanted to do musically on an album. And it's got one of my favorite songs by him on there, Don't Think Twice, It's Alright. But it made it a lot easier to pick up a copy of this on Black Friday with only being like $23 or $24. I mean, honestly, if this was $30, I probably will still grab a copy of it on Black Friday. But the hype sticker on it says, first time ever release of the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan as it was originally conceived. Includes 4 tracks that were withdrawn before the album came out. Rocks and Gravel, Let Me Die in My Footsteps, Ramblin' Gramblin' Willie, Talkin' John Birch, Paranoid Blues, with the original Never Before Seen liner notes. There's the hype sticker on the... that one's not as impressive. I'll still try to cut that one off probably, but or peel that one off of the shrink wrap. But I don't know. Maybe I'm being picky, but I guess maybe just the white background of the hype sticker just kind of looks a little plain to me. But maybe I'll still try to save that one. And for an album that's 60 years old, the artwork looks really, really good. It's not blurry at all on the cover there. And then the back is just the standard. I shouldn't say standard. It's the standard cover and the standard back cover also. There's nothing, no inserts or anything in this one. And no, I'm not going to complain about the paper sleeve for a $25 album. It's on just plain black wax there. I'll clean this one up. I'm sure this is going to sound fantastic, though. Nice old Columbia label. The next album is one I kind of went back and forth on because it is going to be available next year as part of a bigger box set. But I'm probably not going to drop the money on that one. I think the box set is, I think it's 10 or 12 LPs. It's like $200. So I was okay with just grabbing this RSD release. This is Miles Davis live at the Plug Nickel, December 23rd, 1965. I'm sure the box set is going to be fantastic, but it was just out of my price range. At least at this point it is. If I can grab it on sale, a steep discount at some point later on down the line, maybe. But, as of right now, I'm probably going to be fine with just this RSD release. I will say that I do love just the plain black cover with just Miles on there. And I love that's what I was talking about with that Bob Dylan release, is the coloring on the hype sticker, I think, goes better with the coloring on this album jacket than the white does on that Bob Dylan album. A complete set on 2 LPs from the Second Great Quintet's legendary stand at the Chicago Landmark, featuring Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Tony Williams. He's got a great lineup on this, so I'm really excited to hear this one. I will say that I have not been all that thrilled with some of the live jazz albums from the last couple of RSDs. So this is one that is definitely one I was looking forward to. And with the shrink wrap off the jacket, you can really see the beauty and the simplicity of the artwork on the jacket. I love like I said, with just Miles on there, and really the coloring of it also. The coloring has that Chicago nightclub kind of vibe to the coloring on there. There's the back of it. And then this is the first of the RSD releases that I've got that is a gatefold also. It's the inside of the gatefold. I don't exactly know why, but I've always wanted my jazz albums on black vinyl. I have a couple of jazz albums. I think I've got a couple of Thelonious Monk albums. They're on different colors. It always seems kind of weird to me. So it's nice to see that's on black, but these do need to be cleaned up just because they're in paper sleeves and they've got some debris on them. But other than that, they look pretty good. Nice. It's actually got that same old Columbia label on side and one in side 2 there. And disc 2 is actually quite a bit dirtier than disc 1 is. You see all the debris from that paper sleeve on side 3 there, and then side 4. So this definitely need to be ran through the ultrasonic cleaner. Another Black Friday release I was really looking forward to is this live album from Alice Cooper. So this is Welcome My Nightmare, live at the Forum, Los Angeles, June 17th, 1975. So you got a nice little hype sticker on here. At least that's what I said. The hype sticker, I like when the hype sticker actually matches the artwork on the album. So it says previously unreleased live 1975 performance from the LA Forum, featuring Welcome to My Nightmare, Only Women Bleed, and a whole lot more glorious chaos, celebrating 50 years of Alice Cooper's debut solo album, Welcome to My Nightmare. There's the hype sticker on the jacket there. And this is another one. This is the only other one that I picked up that's gatefold. So it's cool. It might be kind of hard to see on the camera, but the insects behind Alice are kind of glossy. Maybe if I can get the light on the jacket there, you kind of see, you can see some of it on there. I will say that that's not the best picture. I'm sure they probably took that from the performance, but it's not the best picture of Alice. It's a little blurry, not the best looking one, but that's the front of the jacket there. It's the back of it with the line up. And then the inside is just pictures, I'm assuming, from the performance. I don't know why or when this happened, but apparently I've become some kind of like inner sleeve snob, because when I pulled these out, my very first thought was like, ooh, at least they're in some kind of like, poly-lined sleeve, and they're not in some junk, paper sleeve like the most of the other albums have been, which doesn't really matter because I'm still gonna clean them like I am with every other album that I pick up. But they still look pretty good. There's side 1 and side 2, and side 3 and side 4. And just because they're in poly-lined sleeves, that doesn't mean that they're kind of they're not still prone from getting debris on them, because there's still some dust and debris on at least the second disc that I know I'm gonna have to clean up before I still, like I said, I'm still got to clean everything before I play it, but, there's still some visible dirt on this one. And that brings me down to the fifth and final RSD album. This is the album that, had I missed out on this, I probably would have tracked down a copy of this on Discogs or somewhere online. I wouldn't have spent a lot of money on it, but I probably would have spent a little more than what I paid for it in stores. And that's just because I've been a fan of this band for a very long time. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. But that's the Ramones live at CBGB's 1977. This was recorded shortly after their second album, Leave Home, came out, and this has never been available on vinyl before. This has only been available on CD as part of the 40th anniversary box set. What was it, 2017 when that came out? So I was a huge Ramones fan. It was definitely one that I had up at the top of my list. But this says Ramones at the venue where it all started. First time on LP on translucent red vinyl. Not a whole lot to say on that hype sticker, but does have a little one on there. This is the one that I don't know. It doesn't really add a whole lot to the album artwork on this one. This is one that I probably won't keep the hype sticker. I don't know. Like I said before, I'm not a huge fan of hype stickers, so if I'm not able to get them off of the shrink wrap, it's not the end of the world. But I don't know. I'll try to get that one off there. And of course, with one of the original punk bands, you would expect, not really anything fancy as far as album artwork goes. Pretty kind of basic and plain. There's the back of the jacket there with just the members of the band, and then the track listing on there. I'm actually a little surprised that there's not an insert in with this album, especially since there's no printed inner sleeve on there. But the album itself looks pretty cool. It's just on translucent red vinyl there. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know how your record store day Black Friday went. I wish it had been a little bit warmer so I could have sat in line longer than I did and talk about music. But, there's always spring for that. But I'm glad I was able to find everything that I was looking for, plus some other albums. I can't wait to clean all these up and give them all a spin. But let me know how RSD Black Friday went for you. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a little thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.